Well, good evening, everybody. And I want to know, can everybody online hear me?
Oh, clear.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to hear this presentation. Now, a lot of HAG's presentations over the years have been about the geology of a specific area or applied geology to a specific topic, like the person like I mentioned earlier, Brent, he actually came from CSX Resources, and he mentioned something about getting guy from abandoned mines. They were able to get what was it called? I'm trying to remember here. I know it is. It's just a methane. It's coal bed methane from mines, and I'm glad to say that his presentations now made it over to the PA Abandoned Mine Reclamation Conference. But in any case, this presentation is a bit different. It just looks at the science holistically and how to develop public understanding for it. Come on, boy. Come on. Where'd that guy go?
Here you go, right there.
Okay. Now, and I'll just state too that this is actually a paper that I wrote, and I actually wrote the paper a long time ago, back when I was a student at Penn State. But I managed to expand it a little bit further, and I got it published in the Journal for Geological Resource and Engineering back in February of 2014. Now, as we know, geology is part of a lot of human activities. I mean, if you're agriculture, energy, or minerals production, or environmental policy and land use planning, those kinds of things. And it's imperative that everyone develop a basic understanding of the science. And what I did in my study was I incorporated some science education and topics, in this case, like the history, philosophy, and sociology of science, or HPS for short, and also informal and pre-choice learning. So what I'll do here is I'm going to talk about the science, how eclectic it is, connecting it to science education and public and environmental policy. Look at geology's place in public understanding of science, and informal and pre-choice learning takes a role there. Then connect HPS to geology. Look at how geologic information is conveyed to the public on a larger scale, and look at some venues for improving public understanding in geology, and then to conclude some future directions in the same. Now, everybody can have a specific definition for geology, but in this case, what I came up with here is it is not only the study of planet Earth, but it's also its resources, past activities, inhabitants, and also the future, where its present inhabitants are concerned. And there are connections to that. There are some real easy ones, like biology, with the natural sciences, biology. That's with paleontology is a perfect example there. With chemistry, that's geochemistry when you're looking for mineral energy and water resources. Or physics, or geophysics with geophysics when you're looking at natural disasters and the like, and environmental hazards. Now, if we want to connect this to public education, earth science public education materials, like these, for example, from the survey, like these little booklets here, and also these page-sized maps. And also television shows cover the topic, and also newspapers and magazines cover it from time to time. Now, there's a larger issue. Geology plays a role in public policy and environmental policy as well, and that's where you're looking at land usage and related resources. You could look at them, and there are various ways you could look at that, like if you want to look at water resources or waste disposal, and also look at regulations that are developed by different types of agencies, and also providing specifics for certain geological resources. And the survey here does that as well as the one in the United States. The U.S. larger federal one. Now, here's a diagram I put together for geology and its connections to natural sciences. And there, up here, you can see that I put that same definition in there again about what geology is, and then I put these other examples from biology, chemistry, and physics. That's how they're connected. But later in this presentation, I'll show you that it connects to some social sciences as well. Now, here's where I bring the science education component into the picture. Now, the first thing I did was look and see, well, who deals with public understanding of science and who covers geology or who comes close to that. And these are just individuals that I came across in that instance. Like this first person there, one perspective from John Zinman. He was actually a science educator, but he dealt mainly with the other hard sciences like chemistry and physics. But what he would ask was, what are people saying about science? I mean, how do people use it? And how people receive scientific knowledge. That's one way. But another individual, Edgar Jenkins, he looked at the concept of citizen science, where individuals get involved with the activities as they go about their science activities, as they go about their daily businesses. And I guess any body of knowledge they get in that case would be like, for example, we're doing watershed protection. You see from time to time, a lot of organizations such as Trout Unlimited, Ducks Unlimited, and the like, they actually go out and do measurements. And some of those measurements actually do involve geology, but although be it mainly in terms of water resources. And the questions that Jenkins had asked were, okay, well, who does the scientific knowledge, from whom does the scientific knowledge come from? I mean, what person's disseminating it? And also, where does it come from? I mean, where can the persons who are involved in this, where do you find them? And also, what organization or the source of scientific knowledge is out there? I mean, who's practicing scientific knowledge? Who are they working for? And where are they getting their information from that they're working with? And the last one I looked at here was Russell Tetler, and he just looked at interactions between science and public, and how they get scientific information conveyed out the same. And here, this is basically about connecting science knowledge to larger issues that affect citizens. And the commonalities among the perspectives were, well, look at the public perception of the science. I mean, got to account for that more thoroughly, because a lot of the scientific information is being conveyed to non-scientists. So it's better to bridge the gap into understanding for that. Also, you got to make connections between scientific knowledge and the daily lives of citizens. And like what that citizen science was done, I mentioned earlier, could do that. And also look at the connection between science and real world problems. And that's coming into play now with, for example, such as carbon sequestration, and also more recently, being able to get rare earth elements from acid mine drainage. And now here's my favorite. Of all the science education topics I looked at, this is my favorite one, and that's informal and free choice learning. And that's generally done outside of a classroom setting. And it's done independently due to whatever an individual might be interested in. And like people like museums, TV, radio, and also internet, books, and newspapers and community organizations, they all get involved in that. If you look at any of those, you may find matters about geology in there. And as widespread as public as informal and free choice learning is, it really doesn't get a whole lot of government funding, less than 1% from the federal level anyway. But geology does actually have a special place there, because there have been internet and newspaper articles that showcase its geologic discoveries and natural disasters, and also television shows like Nova, and those self-learning guides like all the public education booklets from the survey, and also organizations like this one, for example, because they're so the interest is there for people to learn more about the science of geology in a more meaningful way. Now, this one's kind of lengthy, because this is where I bring in the HPS element. And the longest part of that is the H, or history in this case. So I'd have to do an abridged version, because that history of geology is quite extensive. But I guess we'll start here looking at what geologic thought was over time and the lives of individual scientists involved with the schools of thought. Start here with the first one. Anyone who took a class, early geology classes, like may have seen some of these, like where you look at the uniformity area, there's some in there. The Earth's pre-geological processes there occur on a gradual scale, and that's something that Aristotle believed in. Or catastrophism, that's the other school of thought at the time, and that's where the geological processes take place, but they're through sudden events. That's when the changes occur, and that's something that Plato believed in. And then we have the developments of geology early on. Like here we have this, George Bauer actually put out the first minerals handbook. So you get the start of mineralogy in that fashion. That's Dira Metallica. And you even have Da Vinci got involved somehow too. And that's looking at fossils. He identified them as traces of once living organisms. And then this fellow he went by Steno, and then Neil Stenson. He accepted the biblical creation story because he thinks the fossils were animals that were killed by the floods. And you got Robert Hooke in this instance, where geologic history it's both. He actually put there could be sudden events there, but there'll be gradual events there too. And species became extinct because of environmental changes. And also James Hutton, who was supposedly the father of modern geology. And he has made sense, because Earth history it's an unending cycle of processes. Earth is changing all the time, and the geological time is far more extensive, because there's really no real beginning and end, even though we have about 4.5 billion years of history to prove that. Also, we have other schools of thought, like Neptunists, who look at the planet Earth as being covered with water, and that's how it got that the crust got shaped. And Alfred Wegener and continental drift falls into this category. And you got the Plutonists, where the Earth's crust was shaped by extreme heat from within the planet, and that's James Hutton, where that's the uniformitarianism again. And Cuvier and Brodinart, I mean, those sudden changes in geology were caused extinction of species, and that led to the development of paleontology. And we have perfect examples of that, like at the end, between the Permian and Triassic period, there was a mass extinction, and between at the end of the Mesozoic era to the Cenozoic era, there's a mass extinction there too with the dinosaurs. And he also Sedgwick, another biblical fellow here, look at the appearance of the Earth's surface is caused by flooding, and also Jean-Ralph Agassiz. I mean, he got involved with looking at great glacial movements as being part of what occurred in shaping the Earth's crust. Some more individuals here. William Smith. He's the father of modern stratigraphy because he was the first person to look at Earth as having layers, and use these to make geological maps. And that's the forerunner of what we see today. And building on that, another fellow, William McClure, he actually responsible for developing the first map of the United States. And Ben Stillman, the American Journal of Science, and that's the oldest scientific journal in the United States. And geology does get covered in that journal from time to time. And he got three individuals here. Oh, Powell, I remember him, but Clarence Rivers King and Carl Gilbert, don't quite remember them, but they're the ones who mapped the United States as a whole, and that helped lead to the development of the National Park System. Charles Lyell, I mean, he put together the first Principles of Geology textbook, and who was someone familiar to all of us, Charles Darwin, because he's the father of modern evolution, now how species developed and changed over long periods of time. And here's some more individuals here, like Kelvin. This is William Thompson Corlelvin. I mean, he looked at how the rate at which the Earth's crust cooled from molten states, and that led to the age of the planet being only 100 million years. But that's with radiometric dating, that's long been proven. As I mentioned, it's about a little over 4.5 billion years now. Edward Seuss, he looked at geological changes between the cooling and shrinking of the planet, and that's when movements of the Earth's crust had evolved there, and that's back to continental drift, like Wegener, and that planet Earth was one supercontinent. I mean, Pangea, I'm certain most everyone's heard of that one, and it broke apart and made new continents. And Harry Hess looked at molten magma coming up from fissures from the ocean floor, and that's what caused the continents to be pushed apart in the first place. And those fissures mainly divided the Earth and surface from major and minor plates, and that's more than plate tectonics theory. Now, the connection between history of science and public understanding of science here is that there are a lot of competing theories on how the Earth came to be and how the science of geology works. And the work of geologists can look at that in terms of what it means to society, like location of global warming patterns. You get some help from meteorology there. And with history of science, I mean, look at the past practices of geologists could be evaluated for their impacts to society, but they should be compared to geologists today for similar impacts. As I mentioned there, that's extracting rare minerals from coal ash to get them an acid mine drainage. Now here, philosophy of science, that's the P in this case. That's looking at scientists understanding the world and how cultural views affect that direction of where the science is going to go. Now initially, this Charles Lyell got back, William Well was the first one to look at it, and he looked at the principles of geology that Charles Lyell put together, and that was because he's a uniformitarian, because the laws of nature they didn't change, neither the causes for nature that they didn't change either. So that called them both. The first one was law formitarianism about the law, and then the degree is actually where you look at the causes that in nature, and they didn't change either. And another degree is that how intense these causes were, they likewise didn't change. And these two uniformitarian controversies, other individuals got involved too, like Sir Isaac Newton looked at the vera causa, or true cause principle, and also Thomas Reid looking at the intellectual powers of man, because what they both came up with was that if that were the case, then they'd have to look at direct observational evidence that causes that do exist, like the Earth movements, and there's going to be evidence that the causes were sufficient to produce the effects of the permanent effects, like how the planet appears today. But of course, we really can't do that. Any original geological events occurred, they couldn't have been observed. So we rely on look at the events that are occurring today, like earthquakes, volcanic activity, erosion, and floods. Look for clues as to how similar events may have occurred in the past. And there are written records of such events serve as solid accounts of this. And all states, including Pennsylvania, do actually have some relatively accurate histories that can go back several hundred years. And the theoretical change here, thanks to plate tectonics, any philosophical discussions went from determining whether the science was historical, and went from that to determining causes for the Earth's appearance. And that positivism, the logical one, comes into play again, where you look at how the science progresses by confronting hypothesis and evidence. So if any body of a well-founded conclusion can be established gradually and cumulatively. And another one that's really interesting is geology is revolutionary, because that's plate tectonics coming into play again. And that was a revolutionary change, and it was believed to have drawn from a philosopher named Thomas Kuhn. He had a structure of science of scientific revolutions, because he touched on plate tectonics quite a bit in this case. And this was a challenge to the whole logical positive and for competing theories on that subject. Now, the connection between the philosophy of science and public understanding is that there have been philosophical debates about all sciences. Geology was not immune to that. They occur in public light, and they allow anybody can weigh in with their own opinions on the subject, like evolution versus creationism. Hard to believe that's still going on now, but then also there's a dialogue for public understanding can be because all competing interests could be presented, exchanged, and refined, like those other ones I described earlier, like catastrophism and uniformitarianism, and Plutonism and Neptunism. Now, all parties would have to be open-minded so that they can keep their own beliefs, but even after being exposed to other ideas about the science of geology. But the truth of the philosophy of science can only be accepted for educating all parties in many directions, allowing for exchanges, so that they understand why planet Earth appears as it does, how did this appearance occur, and what was the intensity of the activities that caused those appearances as the Earth planet is today. The last one in the HPS group is the sociology of science. That's looking at the practice of science and what's constructed by society as a whole. And this is on interactions between science and the social forces. They could be cultural, they could be economic, they could be political, and they could be religious. And sociology can be looked at two ways: microsociological, that's looking at the science, how it's constructed by social and personal concerns, and how the scientific divisions affect the workplace, or macrosociological, and that's looking at the interaction with science and society on a larger scale, with social, religious, political, economic, and cultural forces, and their collective impacts on scientific practices. And for geology and sociology, that's mostly macrosociological, because geology is connected with the natural environment for all life forms, including human beings we depend on to survive. And also, perspectives are going to come from different persons, and they'll impact any audience that hears it. And they'll convey their information, and how they convey their information, it could be from any of the parties that are involved: academia, private sector, public sector. They could be viewed as villains or heroes, depending upon who those viewing them and what capacity to work. And I have a personal instance on that, because when I first started working for the Commonwealth, I was in the DEP Southeast Regional Office, and I had to deal with competing interests of an environmental group and a company called Waste Management Inc., because they wanted to do a landfill expansion. So I didn't see anything wrong with the permit initially. So I was looked at as the bad guy. Although I was a regular, I was a bad guy, because everything seemed to be in place. But taking a closer look at it, I said, well, there are some things missing. So I told the waste manager to put deep wells in the area, because you don't have any here in your expansion. So I went from being a bad guy to being a good guy, and having permit conditions put in there for those deep wells, and also additional reporting. Just thought I'd put that out there for an instance. That's an actual life thing where I was used as a villain and then a hero. Now, the connection for sociology and public understanding of science is that geology, unfortunately, isn't immune to other factors like economics and politics, because these can direct where the science is going to go. Like a local government, for example, could forego the need to drill wells and delineate a groundwater problem due to lack of money or political pressure, or both. And I'll state too, that's another experience I had in the Southeast Regional Office, where Haverford Township didn't want to put wells in to look at a groundwater problem, and I told them they had to. So what they did was they went to their state representative and state representative went to the regional office, and the whole thing of putting wells in was shut down right away. But so in that case, all they did was put in basins to get groundwater, but that wasn't able to get the job done. And also, I mean, and these same forces that I mentioned here could play a role in local or higher government, like if they want to locate mineral resources or something of that nature. Now, you got to let them run. There are three things that have to be looked at here for sociology, for public understanding of science. Geology, it's ubiquitous. Environmental affairs, because we're all involved with them one way or another. It's going to be interpreted differently from everybody who practices it, and those who receive the information. So this opens a dialogue for public understanding right there. And also, professionals should actually first meet among themselves and share and compare their perspectives, and then after that, they'll meet with the various other sectors of the public to help them learn their perspectives and perhaps hone them further so that more people can understand. Now, this diagram here, if I look at this actually has public understanding of science at the center. But in order to do that, and that has, as you see, it has the whole business of informal and free choice learning, also interconnections between science community and geological topics, citizen science, and conveying scientific and geological information to the non-scientific community, and also public and environmental policy. But those, in order to get there, these other elements have to be considered, like history of science, looking at the different schools of thought about geology through time. Also, philosophy of science, looking at geology as a historical science, and also debating on the causes of the changes to the planet as it appeared over time. And lastly, the sociology of science, you can look at the cultural, political, religious, and social forces. All those elements have to be put into place in order to get to public understanding. Now, currently, what we have here in looking at conveying geological information to the public, we have earth science and geology textbooks, of course. I mean, they're at various levels for anybody to use, and they're readily available. Got media outlets like programs and on cable and satellite TV talk about geology from time to time. Got NOVA, The Universe, National Geographic, and also got magazines, both digital and hard copy, like Scientific in America and E, the environmental magazine. They cover geological topics. Got earth science education pamphlets and booklets, like the ones I might point out here earlier from the Geological Survey. I guess other surveys do that as well, and both federal ones and other state ones do that. And also nonprofit organizations, because the League of Women Voters put out a whole series of groundwater education documents, and the private sector like Waste Management Inc., because that company there and many others have educational publications on groundwater and landfills. And there are also there are instruction manuals for anybody who wants to do more in-depth informal and free choice learning. And that's like a Geology, a self-teaching guide. That is baseline information for it on different branches, and also sample questions to test the understanding of learners. So yes, the information is out there, but more can be done. Now, so there's certain different ways that this can be done as well. There's venues. Now, the first, and all these things can now be done remotely. What I'm going to mention here, they can be done via Skype, WebEx, Zoom, and other related services. The first one is professional conferences like the Geological Society of America, or even the Field Conference of Pennsylvania Geologists. That's where professional organizations with the geological scientists and educators from all sectors of society can present papers on the topics germane to geology or education. Now, an advantage, though, you can get large audiences that way, and participants can get extended learning opportunities, and participants can strengthen their respective professions with geology and education in their own fashions. However, their disadvantages are the focus areas for educational professionals and geological professionals will be different, like teaching and research methods for like classroom versus opposed real work experiences, or pure science versus applied science. That can come up from time to time, unfortunately. Another one we can do is professional workshops, where there's a facilitator who brings geological and education professionals together from all sectors of society to meet and learn with others within and outside their respective disciplines. And they're involved with them. They can share any skills they can bring to the table by all attendees. And participants can all share information amongst themselves with the facilitator. And participants, an advantage is participants can learn about the activities of their counterparts in other organizations. That's helpful. And also, any persons involved can learn more about what constitutes better public understanding in geology. However, there's a lot of time that goes into preparing such professional workshops, and the subject matter, because public understanding is almost never its own topic, but it's interspersed with public understanding of science as a whole. So geology isn't talked about specifically in these areas, but but it's just incorporated with science as a whole. But or with the geoscience education, and they may touch on public understanding, but not go in depth with it. Roundtable discussions can come up too. I mean, that's geology and education professionals from all sectors could come. It could convene at established localities at all levels of government, business, industry, and academia. They can discuss topics germane to their individual and collective disciplines, and that's for commonality. That's what you got to get for roundtable discussion. That's to be successful. Now, one advantage is it can help promote better overall relations between professionals, and also there could be positive relations. It could also lead to more attention being paid to the science of public understanding, with an emphasis on geology. So that's one way to actually get geology into the spotlight, or public understanding of geology in the spotlight in the public understanding area. A disadvantage, though, I mean, as always, conflicts can arise at roundtable events, and these could occur at similar events on later dates, and they could lead to them being discontinued altogether, depending upon how intense the disagreements are. Here's another one, once familiar to everyone. There's teleconferencing and video conferencing, and the education and geological professionals, that's when they come together and share different ideas about communicating over long distances, like television, desktop, laptop, computer, special programming, or Zoom, or WebEx, Skype, Microsoft Teams, like we're doing now, for example. And events can go up with, they can be interspersed. Any interested person for a telephone or video link, they can be arranged that way, so anybody can link in if they want to. Wider ranges of ideas can be exchanged in this case, and many parties will have input. However, the equipment integrity, because sometimes it could work and sometimes it doesn't. And also there's site selection, because there'd be time and space needed for it to put these kinds of teleconferencing and video conferencing together. And it may not be readily available for some people, depending upon where they want to connect from. And here's some training sessions. I mean, that's when a facilitator can get geology and education professionals from all sectors to talk about to develop a dialogue about topics discussed during those sessions, and more open exchange of ideas can occur again, and there's more numerous ideas could be presented about having public understanding. If this gives even another opportunity for public understanding to be in there for geology. However, there are levels of cooperation for these things that are highly varied for participants, and some might want to share, some might not want to share, and also some participants may feel that training efforts are not worthwhile because there are still some territorial mindsets that some participants tend to bring to the table from time to time. And the last one we have here, web-based internet discussions, where anybody from geology or education profession could actually post things online, like say with visit message boards, and offer input on how to improve public understanding of geology from the perspective of their own organizations, or can speak for or against other organizations that may be doing the same thing. Now, you can provide input 24 hours a day at any internet website. However, some of the information conveyed in that fashion, it could be outdated, it could be distorted, misconstrued, or totally inaccurate if the website isn't updated on a regular basis. I'll conclude here by saying that, look, science of geology, it's very eclectic. It connects both natural and social sciences, and it encompasses nearly every aspect of all human activities on planet Earth. It's part of the science is part of public and environmental policy for environmental protection, with like there are different organizations and publications that relate to the science itself, both with them, and that allows the public to be educated about the science. We can enhance public understanding by if issues come on relating on how the information is conveyed, for example, or received by the public, and how the science fares in the bigger picture. Like, let's say, in the real world perspective, because this can give free choice and informal learning of a role too. You look at geology through the lens of history, and philosophy and sociology of science, they also play a role in helping the public understand it better. And informal and free choice learning tools are out there to help public understanding. And also, as I mentioned, if you properly plan and execute training sessions, roundtable discussions, professional conferences, workshops, teleconferencing, video conferencing, and web-based internet discussions, do all those things, they can further enhance public understanding of geology as well for all interested parties. Now, some future directions, like the body of research for public understanding of geology isn't all that extensive. It's quite small, but it's growing due to some efforts from various organizations like the Geological Society of America and Frontiers in Earth Science and federal and state geological surveys. This one included actually are putting forth the effort to improve public understanding of geology. And also a method to consider, like the elements that I discussed in the paper here, they could be combined to and incorporated into a series of forums that cover various topics, and they're made available to all parties. Because that could also play a role in further enhancing individual public understanding of geology as a whole. And all these lists are just references I use from time to time, and it's like contact information. And so I'll be happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Well, I do think this could be a good forum for us to talk about our role as an organization. Daniel mentioned a couple times, just check something, the geologic survey, and yeah, we have a, okay, there we go. Sorry, just changing the camera. So, you know, we mentioned the geologic survey. We take it very seriously. One of our roles is to educate the public. But this organization, I think we can do more to that end. So that certainly goes back to my little teaser at the beginning of the meeting and what Nicole put in her email blast is we're looking to make some changes organizationally, not major changes, but allowing us the ability to start doing. So right now, as an organization, so I'm kind of taking the conversation in a different direction here, but right now as an organization, we have these forums and we listen to a speaker and we have conversations, but it's contained. It's just us. Well, yeah, we put it on YouTube. You know, all right, we're trying with our 37 subscribers, which is probably membership. But this is something aspirationally we want to get more involved in education efforts. I feel we as professional geologists have that obligation. We have this duty to inform the public and to help education. Geology education is in crisis in Pennsylvania. We just found out last week that Kutztown University is putting their geology program holding the remnants of it into their earth science.
But funny you should mention it because long ago, back in late 2016, my alma mater in Philadelphia, Salle University, I mean, that happened the same thing. It's all in environmental science now.
We're seeing this all too often. And it's one thing to see branding, okay, but key to that is Kutztown's removing the requirement for physics 2 and calculus. Oh, okay. And so, unfortunately, we're seeing this throughout Pennsylvania, especially in the passion schools and everywhere. I mean, so what's that?
When you get your license, aren't you supposed to have a geology degree?
Yes.
So what happens if they change everything to environmental science?
You can't qualify to sit for.
So what happens to the PG?
It's going.
It goes away?
Well, I mean, there was discussion, wasn't there last year at the annual meeting? Some organizations are trying to get rid of the PG. Some states.
Yes, some states. Well, if they don't, but it is going to become harder for applicants to qualify for the FG.
Like the state stuff did? I'm sorry, I was a small graduate, so.
Well, no, and I hear you because Kutztown has so that was quite a shock to me when I read this. And I don't, it's public now. I don't know how advertised this is. But again, it's been a trend. We're seeing that in other schools. And I do know there are certain schools to get what you think is a geology degree or it's a geology focus or whatever they call it, and you don't have structural geology. You don't have field camp. You don't qualify to take the PG. So this is a major problem.
Get stuff on the chat here. They said, once there's a little up here Q&A, sounds a little distorted.
Okay. So Bill Roman says AEG is offering 2 days virtual sessions. So yeah, there are outlets out there. But that's where I wanted to bring this up. I don't want to call it focus. I want it to be we as an organization need to be thinking about how do we help this situation? We're not going to do anything about Brooks, but there is a need here. There is something that, and we in the survey, we're doing all the weekend. Our tactics, it's multiple, is to reach much younger education. So early childhood education, we're getting involved in that programmatically, trying to encourage young students to gain an interest in neurosciences and geosciences, because the universities are purely making an economic decision. You can't make them have a program if there isn't interest, if they don't have students, if they don't have tuition. So the institutions of higher education are not they're not the problem here. They're reacting to a situation. And so it's that situation.
There they go again.
Yeah, all right. Oh, so, all right. I wonder why. Okay. Apparently, I get distorted when it's because I'm, all right. So stand at the podium. Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm getting like, hey, Tom.
Got my PG back when it first came out in 1993. It did not require specifically a geology degree. It required a certain number of geological courses which were laid out. So in theory, if that's still the case, you don't necessarily have to have a geology degree, although you have the classwork to meet the criteria. And at that time, they said that because I was already in the geology series, oh, okay, you qualify. So
yeah, and the coursework is what I think is most important.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for example, Millersville rebranded their geology program, but the coursework remained. Structural was a requirement, field method. So, all right, fine, you can call it whatever you want as long as the baseload coursework's there.
You got a question back?
Yeah, Ellen?
Sorry, I just went away from the page. I looked up the requirements and it said you don't have to have a degree in geology. It can be geology, geophysics, geochemistry, or engineering geology with having completed 30 semester hours. So they're all hard science. Like, even if you don't get a strict geology degree, it sounds like they still want you to have a degree that would require like 2 semesters of physics, 2 calculus. So
Yeah, so that's the issue. The issue is the coursework.
If I could just interrupt, I think field camp is it's a really important course. Oh, as a geologist, right?
Yeah.
But who uses it now? I mean, you go to field camp and then you get a job in environmental consultant, whatever. We're not out there. It's important to understand.
I see, and I think we could use it. We could make that argument with a lot of classes, coursework. It's not that you'll directly apply, but you have that fundamental understanding.
Right.
Having been out in the field, understanding field methods, regardless of what you do with your career, you have that basis. So I think we could say the same thing about a lot of things, a lot of courses that we were required to take, like, oh, when am I ever going to use that geochemistry again or something? But we have to understand. We have to be literate.
Yeah, I went to University of Kentucky. I had a field methods course on Saturdays, on fall semester, and they had their own field camp in Colorado. So, and I took that, and I've done a little bit of mapping since then when I was in grad school in high school, but that's about it. It's like the market just shifted in the 80s from like petroleum and mineralogy or mineral exploration to environmental consulting. So we do a lot of that, and kind of like scratching the surface. So, yeah, that's the conundrum. Is like you have to have field camp to really understand geology, but
that's what puts it all together.
It puts it all together, but then it's like a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to go to school and do that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a hardship. Yeah.
The biggest thing I have to teach new employees is how to write field notes, and that's one of the things you learn. Yeah. And a lot of our new hires didn't go to field camp have a problem with it. And I'm constantly, getting them, put this in your notes. This is how you do field notes. This is how you do it. You got to think, put everything in right. Get the legal document.
It changes the way you think. So you think in 3D.
Yeah.
Well, that's another possibility for public understanding of science, at least dealing it with these particular students, or anybody coming in entering the profession was newly minted.
Mm-hmm.
We got some echoing going on in not actually audio echoing because audio. So Chris O says field camp is foundational. Of course, whether you're a mapping geologist or not, it teaches you to tie together the elements of your geological education and perhaps most importantly, how to effectively manage your time. So that's useful. Victoria says, as a recent PG and having been in school recently, I found field camp extremely valuable in the learning process, field note taking, uncommon rock ID, improved structural methods, mapping, etc. in my geologic work after school. So I think it's clear why the PG requires, but to your point, it's a hardship. It takes a time, depending on what school you go to in terms of how much of a time commitment. Who said Saturdays? You said Saturdays, so you can see where students would, if it's not required, they're probably not going to do it. And if it's not required, well, now they've limited their career options by not being able to get a Pennsylvania PG. I don't know about other states in terms of what they require. Yeah.
So you have mentioned part of the goal for this organization is to reach below the college level.
Yes.
Would it also make a difference to go into college and explain to people hey, this is what you can do outside of with your degree. This is what the PG is and why it's important.
Yes.
Yep. Another example of public understanding of science. You can take it to that route too.
Because when I was in college, I had no idea. So.
I was in a GSA meeting in Pittsburgh, and they had a group, 10 of us, in a big room with these big round tables for lunch. And you would sit there and you would have college students around you, and you explain to them what you do and what they can do. And every 10 minutes they rotated. So you got to explain what you're doing, and they keep you on your toes. They're like interns, make you think. But that was really a great experience, because they said, wow, maybe I can get a job. I said, you all get jobs. He said, may not be your perfect job, but you'll get a job. Yeah, but that was a lot of fun.
And that literally sounds like a roundtable discussion to me.
It was.
But you have to drag them into the GSA.
Or us as professionals go to them.
Yeah, just free lunch.
Oh,
That's why.
I'll let
So there was a time not that long ago when, speaking of Kutztown used to bring a van to these meetings, a van full of students. So
for students.
yeah, so that's another thing that I would love to reconnect with the local. I did manage, I think it was last year, I did manage to bring the Millersville Geology Club here, and that went over really well. So I think we as participants, this is our organization, if we talk to our alma mater, just trying to provide that. Now, we got to hold up I'm doing that for the people online because apparently we also, it's on us to provide something interesting, so we have to be engaging. We have to provide that mentoring. And this organization was started its society's in the name. This is started as a social group. So we need to provide that networking and that mentorship. So these are all things I want you guys to think about. It's something I know I keep saying at the survey, we've been thinking about a lot because we're very concerned about the state of geology in Pennsylvania in terms of the next, what are we building here? Where are they? Put you on the spot. Stacy, is there anything you would like? So this is Stacy Daniels. She is our outreach coordinator, among other things. And so she's helping us focus our energy into outreach education events, and we got tons of them going all. So there's plenty of opportunities, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people interested in having people come and talk in their classrooms. It has been a bit of a challenge to connect with teachers. So I've been working a lot on trying to increase our teacher connections and build that kind of relationship. And we're going to be having an event here in October for Earth Science Week, the Geoscience for Everyone Day. And we're opening up our doors to the public and welcoming them to come in and ask whatever geology questions they want. So encourage you guys to also think about attending that.
John.
Well, no, a great opportunity for anyone that's involved in Boy Scouts. They have a line in society rampage. I taught that twice, to about 20 to 30 scouts each time from a whole variety of troops in the area. And field trips are something that can really inspire kids. So I used to take them to a quarry, a limestone quarry near west of York, and they loved it. And they'll always remember that. So you talk about getting into the classroom long before they're in college to get them thinking about, hey, when I go to college, right now they tend to think in terms of natural sciences, chemistry, biology, things like that. But they don't think about geology because there really aren't any K through 12 classes. Typically, they're focused on geology. The best you can usually get is earth sciences, which covers a whole variety of stuff.
And it's still not required in Pennsylvania.
Right. So there's certain places that you want to go use to really inspire kids before they're thinking about what they want to do in college.
Did you teach them the Boy Scout way of reading a topographic map with your hand? Draw the circles, run the methods?
Nope.
Did you later?
No.
This, that.
I think
You see all the light bulbs go on.
my thing was the mine manager gave his piece, then I gave my piece. And the second class, we went down into the quarry, and there's nothing that inspires kids like standing next to a loader whose tires are taller than they are. And we had to delay one time because they're doing blasting. So, there's all kinds of things they will remember.
So in the chat, Katie just mentioned field trips. So that brings me to another plug. We've been talking about it for a while, but haven't done anything about it. We'd like to resurrect field trips as part of this organization. So we're looking for ideas, anything that one might want to do. So another thing about one of the things we were talking about as the officers get together and eat Mexican food is that there are 4 officers, but we have a big membership. So, it's not just us. It's not just us making decisions. This is something for everyone, and we value your input and suggestions and volunteerism. Victoria says we're planning a series of rock walks with the Audubon Young Birders Club. If you know any young people who are into birds and boulders. See, and that's another, thank you, Victoria. I really like that idea of merging, it's not just about geology. Geology, Dan, you mentioned in your presentation, it affects everything. It's foundational. So we can pair with any natural science.
Have them send me a link and I can put it out in the email blast.
Yeah, Victoria, did you hear that? Email Nicole and we'll put it in. And it goes for all of the events that you guys know of.
Yeah, just send me an email and I'll put it in the email blast.
Good.
Do the park services, these and our folks, have geology programs at some of their parks?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a great opportunity.
They'll host walk and talks and trails. And our staff has done that station.
Build off of that, we're trying to revamp our relationships with the state parks and have offered up our services to help them understand the geology of their parks better so that they can have geology programs. Either we help lead that or they are able to facilitate it themselves.
can some of those programs be paired with other things? Like if you're going, if the program involves walking a trip, there's other things you could pair it with the natural sciences to draw more interest.
And I guess you most likely have to, if that's going out, you'll probably have to update the park guides in that case.
Yeah.
So Bill Roman made a sobering but good point here. Public understanding of geology and the science in general may have suffered from the advent of social media, which has the capacity to accelerate and magnify challenges to scientific consensus by spreading unfounded, misleading information for political, economic, and religious purposes. Yeah, we have that to compete. We also, talk about social media, we're also competing for attention. So we've spent a little bit of our time talking about young people. Yeah, I mean, I raised young people, and they're really tough to get through. Like there's a whole bunch more competing for their attention. So, Victoria wants Nicole's contact information. You should have gotten the newsletter. Yeah, and we also have a website. I'm going to put our website in the chat. Oh yeah, Nicole is the secretary. So we have we're a hitchhiker on the Field Conference of Pennsylvania Geologists website. So if you go to that website, there's one called Geo Societies as a tab, and then it has all of the officers. Oh, good. Thank you, Amy. Of course, she's right on the spot giving the emails. All right. Well, yeah, Ellen.
I don't know what the logistics of this would be, but if we want to be proactive, I remember in undergrad, the biggest barrier for me getting to professional meetings was getting a ride there. And if we didn't have somebody organizing vans with the school, or if we didn't have a staff member, I was kind of SOL. So maybe it would be kind of cool if HAGs went on the road, like if you were able to connect with the school and do like a tour, like have just this meeting, but like at a local university, put out some pizza, they'll show up like flying.
Yep. And that too could actually be actually a meeting point where you could have some teleconference or video conference or do some web-based internet discussions and the like, you know.
Thank you guys. This is phenomenal discussion. I knew you guys would have a lot to say, and thank you online for chiming in. This is not the end of the discussion. This is the beginning. Like I do want to continue these conversations and how we as an organization can do more to help with this education crisis that we're facing. So it is time. So I'm going to conclude the meeting. Thank you, Daniel.